Turn that damn camera off right now and show me some ID.
The camera stays on, and I need to know why you stopped me first.
I don't need a reason to stop anyone in this neighborhood, sweetheart.
Actually, you need reasonable suspicion under the Fourth
Don't
Amendment.
get smart with me. I've been doing this since before you were born.
The red and blue lights flashed behind her just as she turned into the church street, and in that moment, Detective Alana Price felt something was wrong, deeply wrong, because she had done absolutely nothing illegal. Yet the way the patrol car rushed up behind her felt less like a routine stop, and more like someone already decided she was guilty of something she hadn't even done. Before I continue, tell me where you're watching from, and please take a second to subscribe, because this story gets intense very fast, and you don't want to miss what happens next. Alana eased her car to the side of the road, right in front of Faith Chapel Church. People were arriving in clean clothes, greeting each other, laughing, holding Bibles. It was a peaceful Sunday morning, or at least it was supposed to be. She turned off the engine and reached for her phone, placing it on the dashboard. Recording started. Alana had been a detective for over a decade. Internal affairs. She had seen everything. Officers crossing lines, abusing power, breaking the law. She had built cases against them. She knew how these moments worked. If something felt wrong, you document it. The patrol car door slammed. Heavy steps approached. Fast. Aggressive. No pause. No calm. The officer reached her window. Turn that camera off right now and show me some ID. His voice was sharp, loud, already angry. Alana looked up slowly. Calm. The camera stays on, and I need to know why you stopped me first. The officer leaned closer, his jaw tight. His name tag read Officer Nolan Briggs. I don't need a reason to stop anyone in this neighborhood, sweetheart. That word hung in the air. Sweetheart. People walking into the church slowed down. Some stopped completely. Alana didn't react emotionally, but inside, she already knew exactly what this was. Actually, she said evenly, you need reasonable suspicion. Briggs laughed under his breath. Don't get smart with me. I've been doing this longer than you've been alive. Alana met his eyes. Then you should know better. That hit him. His face tightened. His posture changed. His hand dropped to his belt, resting near his weapon, not pulling it, but letting her see it was there. It was intimidation, clear and simple. Step out of the car, he said. Alana didn't move. On what grounds? I said step out. And I asked you a question. The tension snapped. Briggs raised his voice. You don't get to question me. You follow instructions. Alana's voice stayed level. You made a traffic stop without telling me why. You're giving commands without legal basis. That's not how this works. By now, at least a dozen people stood on the sidewalk watching. A few had phones out. Briggs noticed, and it made him more aggressive, not less. Look around you, he said, gesturing to the houses. This is a quiet area. We don't get a lot of people like you here. There it was. Clear. Direct. No confusion. Alana's grip tightened slightly on the steering wheel. People like me? She asked. Briggs smirked. Yeah. People who don't belong. Silence fell over the street. Even the church crowd could feel it now. Alana took a slow breath. She wasn't going to lose control. That's exactly what he expected. Officer Briggs, she said, voice firm now. I'm giving you one chance to correct this. You have no reason to stop me. No legal justification. You're escalating the situation for no reason. He shook his head, amused. Or what? Or you're making a mistake you won't recover from. That made him laugh out loud. Oh, I'm scared now, he said. What are you going to do? Call a lawyer. Alana reached into her bag slowly. Briggs stiffened. Keep your hands where I can see them. She ignored the panic in his voice and pulled out her badge. She held it up. Detective Alana Price, Internal Affairs Division. Everything changed. The confidence drained from his face. What? I investigate police misconduct, she said calmly. And right now, you're giving me everything I need. Briggs took a step back. The crowd leaned in closer. Phones were definitely recording now. This is just a stop, he said quickly. Routine. No, Alana replied. This is unlawful detention, racial profiling, abuse of authority. His voice dropped. Detective, we can fix this. Alana opened her car door and stepped out, not because he ordered it, but because she chose to. She stood in front of him, calm, controlled, in a simple church dress, but with authority he couldn't match. You've already said enough on camera, she said. You've already done enough. Briggs looked around. Too many eyes. Too many phones. I didn't mean it like that, he said. Alana didn't blink. You meant every word. For a second, it looked like he might walk away. Ended. But pride got in the way. You people always twist things, he muttered. Gasps broke out in the crowd. Someone whispered, Did he just say that? Alana stared at him. You just said, you people, while detaining me without cause, she said quietly. In front of witnesses. On camera. Briggs froze. He knew. He had just crossed a line he couldn't come back from. Alana stepped back toward her car. This is over, she said. But it's not finished. She got in, closed the door, and drove into the church parking lot. Behind her, Officer Nolan Briggs stood alone on the street, surrounded by silence, cameras, and the sinking realization that his career had just ended, and he didn't even know how fast everything was about to fall apart. And in less than 3 days, the entire country would know his name. By the time Detective Alana Price walked into Faith Chapel Church, the service had already been delayed, not because of anything inside the building, but because almost half the congregation was still outside, replaying what they had just witnessed in low, shocked voices. What was supposed to be a peaceful Sunday had turned into something nobody would forget. Alana sat quietly in the second row. Her face was calm, but her mind was already working. She wasn't thinking like a victim. She was thinking like an investigator. She had seen officers try to deny things before. She had seen reports rewritten, stories changed, cameras malfunction. But this time was different. There were too many witnesses. Too many phones. And most importantly, his own body camera. The evidence was already sealed. After the service, people gathered around her. Concerned. Angry. Curious. Are you okay? One woman asked. Alana nodded. I'm fine. But she didn't stay long. She had work to do. The moment she got into her car, she made 3 calls. First, to her supervisor. Second, to a federal contact she trusted. Third, to herself, mentally preparing for what was coming next. Because this was no longer just a bad traffic stop. This was a case. And she was going to build it fast. Across town, Officer Nolan Briggs sat in his patrol car, staring straight ahead. His hands were shaking. He hadn't moved in 10 minutes. Every second replayed in his mind. The words, the tone, the crowd. And that badge. Internal Affairs. Out of all the people he could have pulled over. He hit the steering wheel with his palm. Stupid, he muttered. But deep down, he knew something worse than that. This wasn't just a mistake. This was a pattern. And if anyone started looking into his past, he pushed that thought away quickly. It didn't matter. It was just one stop. One moment. He could explain it. He always had before. But what he didn't know was that the moment he drove away, the internet had already started moving faster than he ever could. A young man who had been standing near the church entrance uploaded a clip of the stop just 20 minutes after it ended. It was short, only 40 seconds. But it showed everything that mattered. You don't belong here. You people. The tone. The attitude. Clear. Undeniable. Within an hour, the video had been shared hundreds of times. By the afternoon, it had thousands of views. By evening, it had exploded. Comments flooded in. This is exactly what we deal with. He said that on camera? Fire him immediately. Who is that officer? People began identifying him. His name, his department. Everything. By midnight, the video had crossed into national attention. And someone posted something even bigger. A second video. Longer. Clearer. It showed the full exchange. From the moment he approached the car, to the moment his voice changed after seeing her badge. That change, sharp, sudden, undeniable, made everything worse. It wasn't just what he said. It was how he said it. And how fast he tried to take it back. By the next morning, the Riverside Police Department's phone lines were overwhelmed. Calls, emails, messages, all demanding the same thing: accountability. Inside the department, things were already moving. Emergency meetings were called. Command staff watched the footage in silence. No one defended it. No one could. By 9 a.m., the decision was made. Officer Nolan Briggs was placed on administrative leave. His badge and weapon were taken. His access was cut off. And an internal affairs investigation was opened. But that wasn't the part that scared him the most. The knock on his door that afternoon was. He opened it slowly. 2 people stood there. One from internal affairs. The other from a federal agency. His chest tightened. Officer Briggs, one of them said calmly, "We need to ask you a few questions." He tried to keep his voice steady. "This is about the video." The agent looked at him directly. "This is about more than that." That's when the weight really hit him. This wasn't going away. Inside the interview room, Briggs sat across from them, trying to keep control. "It was a routine stop," he said. The investigator didn't react. "What was your reason for the stop?" Briggs hesitated. She looked suspicious. The agent leaned forward slightly. "Define suspicious." Briggs opened his mouth, then closed it. He didn't have an answer that would hold up. The investigator pressed again. "Did you observe a traffic violation?" "No." "Any report of a crime in the area?" "No." "Any behavior indicating criminal activity?" Briggs shifted in his chair. "No." Silence filled the room. The agent finally spoke. "So you had no legal basis to stop her?" Briggs didn't respond. Because he couldn't. The investigator slid a tablet across the table. "Watch this." It was the body camera footage. Clear. Audio sharp. Every word. Every tone. Every mistake. Briggs stared at the screen as if seeing it for the first time. The moment where he said, "People like you." The moment where he rested his hand on his weapon. The moment where his voice changed after seeing her badge. It all looked worse now. Much worse. When the video ended, the room stayed quiet. Then the agent spoke again. "This doesn't look like a misunderstanding." Briggs swallowed. "It got out of hand." "No," the agent said calmly. "It was out of hand the moment you made the stop." That sentence hit harder than anything else. Because it was true. But the worst part wasn't even that interview. It was what came next. Because while Briggs sat in that room trying to explain one incident, investigators were already digging into his past. Traffic stops. Complaints. Patterns. Numbers. And what they were finding was something much bigger than a single mistake. something that had been happening for years. And every record they pulled made his situation worse. Much worse. By the end of that day, this was no longer about one video. It was about a pattern of behavior. A history. A system that had let it continue. And now, everything was about to come to light. For Officer Nolan Briggs, the video wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. By the second day, the story was no longer just about a viral video. It had turned into a full investigation, and the deeper Detective Alana Price and the federal team looked into Officer Nolan Briggs, the clearer it became that what happened outside the church was not a one-time mistake, but part of a pattern that had been building quietly for years. Alana sat in a small conference room, a stack of files in front of her. Traffic stop records. Complaint reports. Internal notes. At first glance, everything looked normal. Numbers. Dates. Routine paperwork. But Alana wasn't looking at them like numbers. She was looking for behavior. And it didn't take long to see it. Briggs had stopped black drivers nearly 4 times more than white drivers in the same area. Search rates were even worse. When he pulled over minority drivers, he searched their vehicles at 3 times the rate of others. And most of those searches found nothing. No drugs. No weapons. Nothing illegal. Just wasted time and humiliation. Alana leaned back in her chair. "This isn't random," she said. The federal agent nodded. "No, it's not." Another file slid across the table. Complaints. There were more than expected. Not just 1 or 2. 12 in the last 4 years. Most marked the same way. Unfounded. Alana flipped through them quickly. Each one sounded familiar. Pulled over without reason. Aggressive tone. Comments that didn't sit right. No evidence. No discipline. She stopped at one file and read it more carefully. A man had been detained for nearly 20 minutes while Briggs searched his car. No violation. No charges. Just a warning. But the man had written something in his complaint that stood out. He kept saying I didn't look like I belonged here. Alana closed the file slowly. Same words. Same mindset. Different victim. Pull every case he's handled involving resistance or use of force, she said. The agent nodded and left the room. Within an hour, the next set of files arrived. This time, the tone shifted. These weren't just complaints. These were serious incidents. One report caught her attention immediately. A young man had been arrested 3 years earlier after a traffic stop. The report said he became aggressive and resisted arrest. Force was used. He was hospitalized. Case closed. Alana read the report again. Something didn't sit right. The language was too clean. Too perfect. She flipped to the photos. Bruises. Cuts. Injuries that didn't match the report. She looked up. Where is he now? The agent checked the system. No current charges. Case never went further. Alana stood up. Find him. Because if that man told a different story, everything would change. Across town, Briggs sat alone in his living room, staring at his phone. He hadn't turned on the TV. He didn't need to. The headlines were already everywhere. The video. The comments. His name. He scrolled through messages. Some angry, some mocking, some threatening. He threw the phone onto the couch. This is blown out of proportion, he muttered. But even he didn't believe that anymore. Because earlier that day, he had received another call. Internal Affairs wasn't just investigating the stop. They were reopening old cases. That's when the fear really started. Not panic. Fear. Because he knew what they might find. And once they found it, there would be no explaining it away. Back in the conference room, Alana sat across from a man who looked tired, but determined. His name was Darius Cole. The same man from the old report. He folded his hands tightly. "I told them what happened," he said quietly. No one listened. Alana leaned forward. "Tell me again." He nodded. "I was driving home. Didn't do anything wrong." He pulled me over. Alana stayed silent. Let him speak. "He said my car looked suspicious," Darius continued. "Asked if it was mine. Same pattern. Same words. I told him it was. He didn't believe me." Darius looked down for a moment. "Then he told me to get out of the car." "What happened next?" Alana asked. Darius's voice tightened. "I asked why." He paused. And that's when everything changed. The room went quiet. He got mad, said I was being difficult. Darius looked up, his eyes steady now. "I wasn't resisting. I was asking a question." Alana nodded slowly. "And then?" "He grabbed me, threw me to the ground." A long silence followed. "He kept saying I was resisting," Darius said, "but I wasn't." Alana didn't interrupt. She didn't need to. The truth was already clear. And after. "I woke up in the hospital," Darius said. That was it. Simple. Direct. Real. Alana exchanged a look with the agent. This wasn't just misconduct anymore. This was criminal. And there were probably more people like Darius. They just hadn't been heard yet. By the end of that day, the investigation had changed completely. It was no longer focused on one incident. It was now a full pattern case. Multiple victims. Multiple violations. Years of behavior. Ignored. Overlooked. Allowed. But not anymore. Because now there was proof. Video evidence. Witnesses. Data. And people finally willing to speak. Alana stood by the window, looking out at the city. "This didn't start on Sunday," she said quietly. The agent shook his head. "No. It just got caught on Sunday." And that was the truth. For years, Officer Nolan Briggs had operated the same way. Stopping who he wanted. Saying what he wanted. Acting without consequences. Because no one had enough proof. Until now. And now that everything was coming together. The case was becoming something much bigger than anyone expected. Federal charges were already being discussed. Civil rights violations. Abuse of authority. A pattern of misconduct under the color of law. Serious charges. Charges that didn't just end careers. They ended freedom. That night, Briggs sat alone in the dark, the silence heavy around him. He finally turned on the TV. The first thing he saw was his own face. Paused on the screen. Mid-sentence. "You people." The news anchor's voice filled the room. New developments tonight in the case involving Officer Nolan Briggs. He turned the TV off immediately. But it didn't matter. It was already too late. Because what started as a stop outside a church had now become a case that could send him to prison. And there was nothing he could do to stop it. By the end of the third week, the case against Officer Nolan Briggs was no longer a question of if something would happen. It was only a matter of how severe the consequences would be, because the evidence had become overwhelming. The witnesses were speaking openly, and the system that once protected him was now turning against him piece by piece. Detective Alana Price sat quietly as the final report was read aloud. Unlawful detention. Racial profiling. Abuse of authority. Violation of constitutional rights. Pattern of misconduct. Each charge stacked on top of the other, building a case that was impossible to ignore. The department didn't delay. Briggs was officially terminated. No suspension. No second chance. His badge was taken permanently. His career gone. But that was only the beginning, because the federal case was moving forward. And federal cases didn't end with just losing your job. They ended in court. Months later, the courtroom was packed. Not with strangers, but with people who had been waiting for this moment. People who had stories. People who had been ignored. People who finally had a voice. Briggs sat at the defense table, no longer in uniform. No badge. No authority. Just a man facing the consequences of his actions. Across the room, Detective Alana Price sat calmly, watching. Not with anger. Not with satisfaction. Just focus. Because for her, this wasn't personal anymore. It was about accountability. The prosecution started simple. They showed the video. The same video that started everything. The same 11 minutes that changed everything. The courtroom stayed silent as it played. Every word. Every tone. Every moment. When it ended, no one spoke for several seconds. Then the prosecutor turned to the jury. "This is not a misunderstanding," they said. "This is a violation." Then came the witnesses. One by one. Darius Cole spoke first. His voice was steady this time. Stronger than before. He said, "I didn't belong," Darius told the court. "Then he made sure I felt like I didn't." Next came another victim. A woman who had been pulled over with her children in the car. "He made me sit there," she said. "My kids were crying. He kept asking if the car was really mine." Then another, and another. Each story the same. Different day. Same behavior. Same officer. The pattern was clear now, and the jury could see it. When it was the defense's turn, they tried to explain it away. Stress. Miscommunication. A difficult job. But none of it held. Because the evidence didn't support excuses. It showed choices. Repeated choices. Then came the final moment. The verdict. The courtroom stood still as the foreperson rose. On the charge of deprivation of rights under color of law. A pause. Guilty. Briggs closed his eyes. But it wasn't over. There were more counts. Each one answered the same way. Guilty. Every single charge. The decision was clear. And now came the consequence. At sentencing, the judge looked directly at Briggs. "You were given authority," the judge said, "and you used it to harm the very people you were sworn to protect." The room was silent. "You didn't make a mistake," the judge continued. "You made a pattern." Briggs stared at the floor. "You had chances to correct your behavior. Complaints were filed. Warnings were given. And still, you continued." The judge paused, then delivered the final words. "This court sentences you to 3 years in federal prison." The sound echoed in the room. 3 years. It was over. Completely over. Outside the courtroom, cameras waited. Reporters called out questions. But Alana didn't stop. She didn't celebrate. She didn't speak loudly. Because for her, this moment wasn't about winning. It was about making sure this didn't happen again. In the months that followed, the department changed. Policies were rewritten. Training was expanded. Body cameras became mandatory at all times. Data on traffic stops was reviewed regularly. Patterns were flagged early. And complaints were taken seriously. Officers who showed signs of bias were no longer ignored. They were monitored, corrected, or removed. The culture began to shift. Slowly, but clearly. The community noticed. Trust didn't come back overnight, but it started to rebuild. Because people saw something different. They saw accountability. They saw change. And most importantly, they saw consequences. Detective Alana Price returned to her work. But this case stayed with her. She began speaking at community meetings, teaching people their rights, explaining what to do in situations like the one she faced. Stay calm, she would say. Document everything, and never assume you have no power. Because that was the truth. Power wasn't just in a badge. It was in knowledge. It was in courage. It was in refusing to stay silent. Back in a small town miles away, Briggs started over. No uniform. No authority. Just a job at a hardware store. Quiet. Unnoticed. The life he once had was gone. Because of one stop. One moment. One decision to abuse power. But the truth was, it wasn't just one moment. It was years of moments. Finally exposed. Finally answered. And it all started on a quiet Sunday morning, when he pulled over the wrong person. A person who knew the law. A person who refused to be intimidated. A person who made sure the truth was seen. And in the end, that truth changed everything. Because no badge is above the law. No officer is untouchable. And no injustice stays hidden forever. If you stand up, if you speak out, and if you make them answer for it.